we're going to do our three bows, and then I'll introduce our speaker for today. So if everybody will please stand. Three bows to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And one bow to our speaker today, the Venerable Cintita. All right, let me introduce our speaker, and then we'll get him up here. So our speaker today is the Venerable Cintita. Before entering monastic life, Bhikkhu Cintita, who earned a PhD in linguistics and an MS in computer science, was a professor of computer science at Southern Illinois University and worked in the corporate world doing research and development in artificial intelligence, which brought him to Austin, Texas. In 2001, Bhikkhu Cintita retired from his career to devote himself to practice and later teaching, which he has done ever since. He spent 1.5 years at the Tassajara Zen Monastery in California, then ordained
Tassajara.
Tassajara, thank you.
Tassajara.
Tassajara.
Spanish.
And then ordained as a Zen priest in 2003 at the Austin Zen Center, which he had helped found a few years before. He lived, trained, and taught at the Austin Zen Center for 6 years. In 2009, he traveled to Myanmar, where he ordained as a Theravada monk. Since returning the following year, he has been affiliated with the Burmese Sitaga Monastery in Austin and in Minnesota, where he's been engaged in scholarship, teaching, and practice based on the earliest stratum of Buddhist text. He currently resides in Minnesota. Bhikkhu Cintita.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me once again. I'm actually going to be back in 2 weeks, I think, scheduled. So I'm going to talk about the awakening factors, the 7 awakening factors, a very important teaching of the Buddha that is all too often ignored. It is overlooked. It's very important. The fact that it's called awakening factors should draw our attention to its importance. Let me put up the 7 awakening factors on the screen. I think I know how to do this. Click on that and put it as a background and share. Okay, do you see the 7 awakening awakening factors behind me?
We got it.
Okay, so the 7 awakening factors are recollection, Dhamma investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, composure, and equanimity. So let me begin by saying walking through this list and trying to define these things. Recollection is sati. Most of you will know sati as mindfulness. I don't like to use mindfulness as a translation for sati because the word mindfulness has changed its meaning from when it was originally introduced, I believe, in 1881 as a translation of sati. Sati is literally means recollection or memory. And so I'll, like Thanissaro Bhikkhu and other teachers, I prefer to use recollection. Dhamma investigation is basically vipassana or satipatthana. We know that I don't think the term Dhamma investigation, Dhamma vichaya, is very common in the suttas, but it is used here. It is, but the Buddha tells us specifically that it means, he equates it with satipatthana. So the idea of satipatthana, it's a major teaching, and it is the really involves investigation of Dhamma. So very quickly, what Satipatthana or Vipassana does is it uses the Dhamma as a springboard for observing direct experience. What we do is we take a Dhamma teaching. The Satipatthana Sutta, for instance, is really a tutorial that presents us with a number of exercises, 21 different exercises, and each of these has some Dhammic content. We take a Dhamma teaching, for instance, impermanence or the aggregates, and then we reflect on that teaching in our own experience. So we discover the equivalent observables in our own experience in order to let that teaching lead us into a different way of experiencing the world. It is a progressive teaching. We come back to it over and over again so that we eventually internalize the Dhamma. That is, we don't have to think of the Dhamma of impermanence, for instance, as an intellectual teaching, a conceptual understanding, but rather we eventually see the world as impermanent directly without even thinking about it. We no longer see a world with a self. Wait, are you guys seeing the list of factors
Yes,
here?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I see the list.
Okay, because I'm seeing the window, me in the window. It's just a black background. I'm not seeing the factors. Okay. Oh, in this window up here, I see it. Okay. So, so anyway, briefly, that is what Dhamma investigation means. In my writing recently, I began translating the word satipatthana as Dhamma investigation. The reason is that satipatthana is usually translated as the four foundations of mindfulness. It's a horrible translation. It is so far removed from what satipatthana really means. Satipatthana literally means recollection, sati, attentiveness, upatthana, recollection, recollection, attentiveness, which doesn't really tell you anything that it's about Dhamma investigation. So I'm using the word Dhamma investigation. Thanissaro Bhikkhu famously has made the translation of Satipatthana even crazier. He calls it the four the four frameworks. Oh, let's see, what is he called? I'm losing his interpretation. Oh, it's not coming to me what he calls it. Okay, so this is very important. This is going to be a central part of this of the seven factors of awakening. Energy is energy. It is the wholeheartedness, the ardency that we bring to practice, to any practice. Virya, rapture, and tranquility, and the rest are particular states of mind. We can understand them. So rapture is a kind of pleasure. I used to avoid the translation rapture because it also has Christian connotations, but it's actually in its root meaning, it's very good. When we're really engaged in something, deeply engaged in something, we we start to experience this kind of pleasure, but it's not a contented pleasure, it's an excited pleasure. We're so happy to be doing this. And this is how we should feel about Dhamma investigation. So, Dhamma investigation is a kind of a skillful engagement in a particular practice. And that skillful engagement requires energy, but then we enjoy doing it. We're having fun. And so this is rapture. Tranquility is, in opposition to rapture, is a much stiller state. It's a quieter state. So basically, we can have both at once. Just pleasure, kind of a contented pleasure, goes very quickly into tranquility. Rapture still retains that sense of excitement along with the tranquility. And then we go to composure. Composure is my preferred translation for samadhi, which most people translate as concentration. I have some difficulties with that translation, and composure is a translation. It's actually literally what samadhi means, composure or collectedness. And it's a translation that's gaining more and more popularity. But because people are usually not familiar with that as a translation, I'm just going to use the word samadhi because almost everybody who's belongs to Buddhist circles is aware of what samadhi is. Samadhi, we won't take it apart very much, but we'll have some things to say about it. The samadhi, as we know, is divided. In the earliest texts, samadhi is strictly four jhanas. It has four depths, four jhanas. Equanimity is a characteristic, a property of the fourth, the deepest jhana, upekkha. So this are the seven awakening factors, quite briefly. Now, these are interpreted by modern practitioners, teachers, scholars in different ways. There is no uniform way of interpreting what the seven awakening factors are or even what they're for. One one interpretation that's kind of preferred by the Abhidhamma school is that these are factors that manifest if you're awakened. So they're parts of awakening. They're part of the experience of awakening. So we have these. We're presumably in constant samadhi. We are constantly investigating. This would entail of our observables in terms of Dhamma. We are feeling rapturous and tranquil at the same time. So this is one understanding. Another understanding kind of minimalizes the importance of the seven awakening factors, and that is that these are an antidote to the hindrances. The hindrances are ever present as kind of the basic distractions from practice. They undermine our practice totally. Most people who learn meditation learn the hindrances because there's kind of an antidote for each of the hindrances. So the hindrances are lust, ill will, sloth, and torpor. Let's see, remorse. What's the other one called? The kind of distractedness, restlessness, and then doubt. These are the hindrances. And so So the it's certain that the seven awakening factors will, if you can practice with the seven awakening factors, the hindrances will be gone. If you can establish all of these in your practice, but they are much more than that. So the third interpretation is the one that the Buddha gives us very explicitly. The seven awakening factors are part of our practice. They are a practice, something that we sit on the cushion and do, and they have a result. They produce, over and over, the Buddha says they produce knowledge. There are kind of three terms for this. When we say that also that the Noble Eightfold Path produces awakening, but it does this, it produces first knowledge and then produces liberation, and liberation is final awakening. Knowledge is the culmination of wisdom practice. And knowledge is jnana, but it's also it expands into you. It's also knowledge and vision. It's sometimes called, and then it's sometimes called knowledge of and vision of things as they are. And so the Buddha tells us, if you look at the Bojjhanga, the awakening factor Samyutta, in the text, there are a lot of suttas, discourses on the awakening factors. And the Buddha tells us over and over again, the awakening factors produce knowledge and vision of things as they are. And so they bring you very close to awakening. This is really the final practice before full awakening. It's a necessary practice before full awakening. So this is what the Buddha actually tells us in the suttas. Now, the question remains, are these an ordered set of seven factors, or are they unordered? It's often taught that they are unordered. But if you go back to the Buddha, you'll see that this is a causal chain. That is, that recollection gives rise to Dhamma investigation, or it enables Dhamma investigation. Dhamma investigation gives rise to energy, gives rise to rapture, gives rise to tranquility, gives rise to composure, and gives rise to equanimity. The problem with this interpretation that this is a causal chain, which the Buddha explicitly tells us it is that it flies in the face of the later Theravada tradition, which viewed samadhi as something very, very difficult to attain. That it cannot be, that you can either practice Dhamma investigation or Vipassana, or you can practice samadhi, but you can't practice both at the same time. And the reason is samadhi is too still of a state. That Dhamma investigation is conceptual, it is active investigation, and samadhi is really shuts the mind down. It's incapable of doing this investigation. So the later school prefers the interpretation that these are unordered, and that actually that you do not practice Dhamma investigation and composure or samadhi at the same time, but rather that you can use samadhi to help with your Vipassana or Dhamma investigation by entering a state of samadhi, going deep into samadhi, coming out of samadhi, and then doing the Dhamma investigation. So if this is a causal chain, it would have to be backwards in the later Theravada tradition. This is the tradition that comes out of the Visuddhimagga, or The Path of Purification, which is a Theravada text compiled about 900 or so years after the death of the Buddha. Um, okay, so this actually is order. This is what the Buddha tells us. Now, there's often, Theravada is really dealing with the later commentarial Visuddhimagga tradition, as well as the early Buddhist texts. My method or my preference is always to look at the early Buddhist texts. Sometimes the commentaries are great, they can tell you a lot, but if there's a contradiction, always go back to the early Buddhist texts. I'm very much an advocate of early Buddhism and studying it on its own. If you don't mix the teachings from the both sources, early and later, you find that the early is very, very systematic, very coherent, very clear, and very well taught. This has been my experience. Okay, now what I would like to do is talk about the arising of samadhi, basically starting with rapture and going to composure. We can put equanimity aside. I won't have any more to say about it because it's simply an extension of samadhi. And it turns out that this sequence of rapture, tranquility, composure, or samadhi occurs all over the place in the suttas. Hardly anybody recognizes this in a different context, not as part of the seven factors of awakening. So let me give you some examples of this by reading some passages from the suttas. Okay, here's the Buddha speaking. What we're going to find out is we're going to learn something about samadhi that'll be very, very surprising for most of you. It was very surprising for me to discover it, but it's well established. Okay, bhikkhus. For a virtuous person, one whose behavior is virtuous, no volition need be exerted. Repeat that. No volition need be exerted. Let satisfaction arise in me. It's natural that satisfaction arises in one who is virtuous, one whose behavior is virtuous. It is natural that delight arises in one with satisfaction. It's natural that rapture arises in one who is delighted. It's natural that the body of one with a rapturous mind is tranquil. It is natural that one who is tranquil in body feels pleasure. It is natural that the mind of one feeling pleasure dwells in samadhi. So what's surprising about this text is it starts with somebody's behavior is virtuous. Apparently they are, offering alms to a monk or to a traveler or to indigent or helping somebody who's sick or something who's involved in some virtuous practice. That basically no volition needs to be exerted, and it sets this chain of causality in motion that goes from satisfaction. We feel satisfied when we're engaged in a virtuous activity and really are feeling the kindness or the compassion of the activity, and that this naturally turns to delight, then to rapture, then to tranquility, and to pleasure, and to samadhi. No volition need be exerted. It'll just naturally arise. This is somewhat surprising. There's no point at which we decide, oh, I need to go into samadhi. I need to focus on my breath coming in and out of the nostrils. There's no method here for samadhi. It just arises as part of this chain of causality. Um, but notice that here we have delight, rapture, tranquility, pleasure, and samadhi. Whereas before in the seven awakening factors, we find rapture, tranquility, and samadhi. So what we find in the seven awakening factors is basically an abbreviation of what, or an abridgment of what we have here. We have two additional factors, delight and pleasure, following in this sequence. Okay, so let me give another example. When a noble disciple recollects the Buddha, so recollection of the Buddha is a practice. The Buddha is part of the recollection of the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and we sit there chanting. You often daily, most of you probably do this chanting the recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So this is what the practice is that's we're starting with. So when a noble disciple recollects the Buddha, so specifically on the Buddha, on that occasion his mind is not obsessed by lust, aversion, or delusion. So basically the hindrances are gone. On that occasion, his mind is simply straight based on the Buddha. A noble disciple whose mind is straight gains inspiration in the meaning, gains inspiration in the Dhamma, gains delight connected with the Dhamma. When he's delighted, rapture rises for one with a rapturous mind. The body becomes tranquil. One tranquil in body feels pleasure. For one feeling pleasure, the mind comes to samadhi. So again, it just kind of flows out of it. The next paragraph is a little surprising in itself. It says, you should develop this recollection of the Buddha, which means recollection of the Buddha with all of its consequences leading to samadhi. You should develop this while walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. You should develop it while engaged in work and while living at home in a house full of children. So this suggests something, doesn't say it directly, but that samadhi is something that arises in a lot of different under a lot of different conditions. It doesn't have to have a particular conditioning factor. So let me offer another example. There are a lot of these in the suttas. Once you start looking for these, there's a teaching called the stages of liberation, which I write on quite a bit. The stages of liberation basically are mostly steps prior to Dhamma investigation, but end with Dhamma investigation. So this is basically you start by learning the Dhamma. At the time of the Buddha, this would involve memorizing. You didn't have handy books or something you could click on to bring it up from the internet. You had to memorize the Dhamma in order to ponder it. So you memorize the Dhamma. You have to recite it to memorize it. You have to recite it with other people that already know these particular Dhamma teachings. And then you ponder them. So you think about them a lot. And then you finally bring them to the cushion and start engaging in Dhamma investigation. It's interesting because we go through each of these stages of liberation. Again, this is leading to awakening. Remember, knowledge, liberation, awakening. Liberation is awakening. So it has a name, something like the awakening factors that indicate its importance. at so when we're sitting there, when we're memorizing things, reciting things, memorizing, at the first stage, the second stage starts doing some teaching ourselves. We memorize, we recite for others and teach others, and so on. At every stage, we have this passage. In whatever way he experiences inspiration in the meaning and inspiration in the Dhamma, as he does so, delight arises in him. When he is delighted, rapture arises. For one with a rapturous mind, the body becomes tranquil. One tranquil in body feels pleasure. For one feeling pleasure, the mind gains samadhi. So we can gain samadhi while we're reciting something. And so this is what it says. This is for each of the stages. It doesn't say we can enter into a deep state of samadhi, but we at least reach samadhi, which means at least the first jhana in the early texts. There's no such thing as momentary samadhi or neighborhood samadhi in the early texts. They're just absent. Samadhi is the four jhanas in the early texts. Okay, so again, it seems like samadhi just kind of arises, goes through these antecedent stages of rapture, tranquility, samadhi. We may or may not include the delight and pleasure, and then reaches samadhi at the end of these other states. Um, Now, here is kind of an amazing passage when the Buddha starts. How, is samadhi really arising by itself without effort? Or is there at some point we need to stop and use some kind of method? There are many methods that are taught. Almost all of you know one or another. To enter samadhi, do we have to have a method to enter samadhi at all? The fact is, it's puzzled a lot of people for a long time that the Buddha never describes any method for entering samadhi. He doesn't describe, sitting and observing the air passing through the nostrils or clearing the mind or focusing on the belly or focusing on a mantra. They're really absent. There are a couple things that in later tradition are interpreted as maybe methods, but it's quite questionable. Okay, but here is a passage that is very surprising. Okay, the Buddha says, just as bhikkhus, when rain pours down in thick droplets on a mountaintop, the water flows down along the slope and fills the cleft, gullies, and creeks. These being full, fill up the pools. These being full, fill up the lakes. These being full, fill up the streams. These being full, fill up the rivers. And these being full, fill up the great ocean. So too with faith as a proximate cause. Okay, faith you can think of this as wholeheartedness, conviction. It is really equated with the refuges. Basically, you are really into this. You take the Dhamma very seriously, and it's the basis of all of our practice. We have to have faith before we really experience where this practice is leading to. So with faith as approximate cause, delight. With delight as approximate cause, rapture. With rapture as approximate cause, tranquility. With tranquility as approximate cause, pleasure. With pleasure as approximate cause, samadhi. With samadhi as approximate cause, the knowledge and vision of things as they really are. So here we even have samadhi as what gives immediate rise to knowledge and vision of things as they really are. Um, so again, this is effortless, just like it takes no effort on water's part to flow downhill. That's what water does. This is what the mind does. Um, so these are very significant observations about samadhi. Let me uh, also talk about what samadhi, the Buddha describes samadhi as doing. Um, one final passage that I'll read um, is that people that engage in samadhi, we clear the mind. But samadhi, as in the passage I just read, is is interpreted as the proximate cause for knowledge and vision of things as they are. Now, it's easy to see how Satipatthana or Dhamma investigation uh, brings about knowledge and vision of things as they are, because we're taking the Dhamma one teaching at a time and subjecting it to investigation. So we're investigating non-self, we're investigating impermanence, we're investigating the aggregates, we're investigating the sense spheres, and so on until these become entirely familiarized. And so we can see how that's bringing us closer to the culmination of wisdom in knowledge and vision of things as they are. But what's the role of samadhi in doing the same thing, basically? The Buddha says, another citation, uh, bhikkhus, there are these four developments of samadhi. So this is what samadhi turns into. There is a development of samadhi that developed and cultivated leads to dwelling happily in this very life. Okay, now most of us have experienced this. We meditate a lot. We actually start feeling better in our life. The second, there is a development of samadhi that developed and cultivated leads to obtaining knowledge and vision. So there you have it. Third, there is a development of samadhi that developed and cultivated leads to recollection discernment. So recollection discernment is a very common phrase. It's sampajanya, sati sampajanya, recollection and discernment. It's probably the phrase or compound that comes closest to how mindfulness is understood today. So the sampajanya, the discernment, is the thing that becomes very aware and very attentive of details. It is what observes our the details of our experience, which is a necessary part of investigation of Dhamma or any kind of skillful engagement in a practice. And so samadhi improves that. We kind of expect it to degrade that if we're going into these very still states of mind, that our faculties of observing or recollecting or keeping the Dhamma in mind are degraded as we enter deeper samadhi. But that's not what this says. It says there's a development of samadhi that leads to recollection discernment. And the fourth point is there's a development of samadhi that developed and recollected leads to the destruction of the taints. The taints here, the asava. I I'm translating them now as the corruptions in my writing. because taints isn't a strong enough word. The taints, the destruction of the taints are equivalent to awakening. That's all I need to say about it. So it's saying samadhi leads to awakening, which is good. So it seems that both the Dhamma investigation and samadhi both seem to lead to awakening. And this means that, it's really the seven awakening factors that are leading to awakening, which integrate the Dhamma investigation and samadhi in our practice. That's what the seven awakening factors seem to do. This leaves the question, though. Samadhi can get very, very deep. When it reaches the equanimity state, it's almost a trance-like state. And the first jhana, the shallowest state of samadhi, actually the mind can be thinking. It can still be thinking, but it is very concentrated. And by the time we get to the fourth jhana, the mind is in a extremely still state. How can it be working on um, developing knowledge and vision of things as they really are? One thing to remember is that when we're investigating the Dhamma, what we're always doing is we're comparing, using the Dhamma as a guide. We keep the Dhamma in mind. We're looking at our experience. We're finding the factors, the things that are mentioned in the Dhamma, and finding what we can observe and experience that correspond to that. And we do this over and over again for each Dhamma teaching. So we can do this for the aggregates. I've been doing this for the aggregates for years. And for each Dhamma teaching, we kind of break through. We start to internalize the teaching so that we more quickly and more naturally see that in our experience. Until we can reach a point in our experience, especially in samadhi, in which there's no self here, no self. For the Buddha, no self is not a philosophical position; it's an experience. Where am I? There's no difference between self and other in when you see things as they really are. So the investigation of Dhamma is a skill that we learn and we internalize uh, without thinking about it. That is, we just see no self. Oh, everything's changing. We don't have to think about it anymore. Um, this should not be mysterious. This is how we learn everything. So consider some everyday things that we do. A lot of us have favorite hobbies. We have skills that we engage in very, very deeply, very quickly, and we love to do it. Maybe playing chess, maybe making pottery, maybe playing the piano. All of us have things that we're really good at and really enjoy doing. If you don't, it's too bad because it's really the thrill of life, and it's more than a sensual pleasure that you get out of it. As you say, you're a chess player, you really get engaged in chess. What happens? You're sitting there, sitting at the table playing chess. You're staring at the game. You're trying to work out things. What happens? The rest of the world disappears. There's only the chess game and the board position, and you're totally focused on that. Or when you're making pottery, you get that. Think of a really good pianist, like a virtuoso pianist. They are so engaged that everything else disappears. Um, and this is natural when we get very, very good at something. And so these are skills that we're engaged in. So we're skillfully engaged in something, just as we're skillfully engaged in practices like guarding the senses or following precepts. Uh, we have various practices or investigating Dhamma. We can be very engaged. When we're very engaged, things disappear, the hindrances disappear. We forget to eat. We miss meals. I do this all the time. We yeah, we forget serious appointments, doctor's appointment or something, or the hot date that we've arranged, or whatever. We just don't show up because we're playing chess or making pottery. We're just totally engaged in it. We experience rapture. This is so much fun, especially when we let go of everything. The mind is just focused on one thing. If we're very skillful at it, the mind can become very still around this practice. We don't have to think about it. It's like, if we're playing the piano, our fingers know what to do. If we're making pottery, our fingers know what to do. It's like muscle memory, and yet we're still doing it. We're still engaged in the same activity. And this rarely leads to something that Buddhists would call samadhi, but it does sometimes. And I think when we look at literature, some of you will know the word flow that has been studied in positive psychology, the flow state where people are athletes, for instance. They call it being in the zone sometime when playing basketball. At a critical moment of the game, whether their team wins or loses depends on if they can make this flow, make this basket, and they do. And then they report afterwards. It's the weirdest thing. It's like I wasn't even there. The ball knew where to go. My hands were there. They knew how to follow the ball, but I didn't do anything. The ball just went in the basket. This happens in music as well. Charlie Parker said once said, who's also considered the outstanding saxophone player, probably of the 20th century. Um, he says, you don't play the saxophone plays you. You disappear from it. You're not doing anything. And yet the saxophone playing is going on. And so I think this also happens with samadhi. And it's really in these very still states of mind. The mind has some incredible additional capabilities in these very still states of mind. One thing is insights. All of us have insights about one thing or another, some intractable problem we can't solve. We put it aside and then we're like in the shower or something, doing something completely different, and into our mind pops the solution. The mind has been working on it subconsciously, and I think that's what probably samadhi is doing. Okay, so what have we learned? The seven awakening factors, they have to do with the final stage of awakening. They're not sufficient to get to awakening in themselves. Before we can even uh, get to that stage, we need to be very adept in virtue. The Buddha tells us this over and over again. Virtue comes first. And in fact, wisdom can be thought of as an extension of virtue. We become very virtuous. We follow all of the precepts. We're kind in everything. Now let's do it with no sense of self whatever. Suddenly we're in a different level of virtue. Um, but it is the really has to do with this practice of Dhamma investigation and these final steps that take us to seeing things as they really are, knowledge and vision, and making the final breakthrough to wisdom, which leads very quickly to awakening. Okay, questions. Let's see. I'll leave this up, I guess, so people can refer to it in their questions. The awakening factors.
I have a question.
Okay.
You said that these 7 awakening factors in many ways could be understood as antidotes to the 7 hindrances.
That's one of the interpretations people have for them.
Okay. So I don't know if that necessitates some kind of correspondence where, like, this particular awakening factor corresponds to or is an especially appropriate antidote for this or that particular hindrance. But I guess my more specific question is, if and as we discover or I discover hindrances that are particular problems for me as an individual, or what have been particular stumbling blocks, do you think it's better just not to focus on those and really put all our focus and attention onto the cultivation of these awakening factors? Or, I guess in some contrast, do you think we should, if not actively, at least, with much awareness, be aware of particular hindrances we have, and then largely in response to that, think, oh, I really need to, or I really should develop such and such an appropriate awakening factor?
So that seems to be the interpretation some people have. That's not what the Buddha says. The Buddha does compare awakening factors with hindrances, but it's basically at the level, you can live your life stuck in the hindrances, which most of us are all of the time, or you can you have a choice of going a different direction, which is developing the 7 awakening factors. The the hindrances are something that can be practiced. Removing the hindrances is something that can be practiced by itself, and the and there are techniques. We read about that with our Buddhist book club here in Minnesota is reading Bhante Gunaratana's Mindfulness in Plain English. So he'll talk about the hindrances a lot about what do we do about this? What do we do about that? It's usually basic meditation practice before you're worried, long before you're worried about 7 awakening factors. You let go of the hindrances, but you will see in your everyday life that there are certain things that we are just drawn into. They're skills we learn that we become skillfully engaged in them, and the hindrances will be gone. No effort on our own. We're just so engaged. That's where the mind wants to go. It doesn't want to be distracted. Don't think of the 7 awakening factors as antidotes for individual hindrances. The whole thing involves skillful engagement at the level of Dhamma investigation that the hindrances cannot survive that.
Okay, thank you.
Bhante,
Yes.
thank you for the teaching. So back in Buddha's time, the monks, when they practice, their life is so simple, and they devote their full life to Dhamma practice. So it's easy for them to reach jhana and reach enlightenment. But for us, our life is so complicated. It's really
Yeah.
difficult.
So for monks, I would say it's easier, not easy.
It's not easy even to reach the first jhana. So
Yeah.
actually, the investigation of Dharma and the samadhi work hand in hand. It's like if you have a glass of water that's muddy, you cannot see anything, right? Until all the mud settled down to the bottom and the water is
Yeah.
clear. That's when you
Yeah.
see things as it is. So samadhi is kind of like clear your mind of all the mud until the water is clear. And then you can
Yeah.
see things as it is. So it's like
Yeah.
you see impermanent and non-self clearly because your mind is
You
clear.
see it, yeah, directly without thinking about them.
Yeah. Without clear your mind, there's
The
no way.
intuitive mind, you just
Right.
knows
So
it's there.
they work hand in hand. So
Yeah.
Buddha talk about samadhi that you can reach the enlightenment and the jhana. I don't think he meant just the samadhi. I think he means with samadhi, you can investigate the dharma and seize the true reality.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But how it's so difficult to reach the Buddha didn't give you a step by step in detail how you practice to get the jhana. So that's why so many masters like Mahasi, Pao, and Goenka, they give you all different way of approach. But so you have to. It's really difficult just without detailed teaching to practice the samadhi and the vipassana just based on Buddha's teaching
So,
without detail.
so what I observe in all of these cases, so there's many cases where we are engaged in some kind of Buddhist practice, and we're skillfully engaged in it. It's usually something that requires a lot of presence in mind, attentiveness, while keeping the Dhamma in mind. And then you enter into rapture and the rest of the factors that go into samadhi effortlessly.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is what the Buddha tells us. The thing is, it is not many people. I think probably everybody experiences samadhi sometimes or sometime in their everyday life. When they just get very engaged in something, they can at least get in the first jhana. But because it is a natural process, the Buddha is really not introducing something totally new to do with the mind. He's taking advantage of what are already human capacities, but he is refining them. So even though it's effortless, what we do in our practice, we're aware that just kind of slightly aware that this is the mind's getting real settled. Things look different, and that we want to return to that state, let that state arise again, and just dwell there for a long time. The Buddha talked about just dwelling someplace for a long time. The longer we dwell there, and the more often we return to that state, the more disposed the mind is going to be to reach that state. So the first jhana at some point becomes quite effortless for people. They naturally reach the first jhana after doing a lot of meditation, but they realize, oh, this is where I want to be. They spend time there. And whereas reaching the first jhana, they're not supposed to expend effort, is the thing, but they let it arise naturally. Generally, it won't when they're meditating if they're beginners, but as they go along, occasionally it will. And just kind of let the mind rest there. Just let it dwell there. and then you popped out, you're distracted, you're daydreaming or something, but then next time you meditate, if you reach that state, yeah, just dwell there. And this is the way we refine these capabilities that we already have so that the mind is more disposed to go in that direction. And after a while, you can, sit down and meditate, take one breath and be in first jhana. And then, then sometimes you'll go into second jhana. Second jhana is quite a shock. And then, because basically your basic level of thinking disappears. Your perceptions do not, but your thinking does. And so you familiarize yourself with these states, and they become very refined and natural. In positive psychology, they're interested in these states of flow or being in the zone because they're pleasurable, and they want to be able to reproduce these pleasurable states. They need to learn Buddhist meditation to do that because we can reproduce these states. And for very, very adept practitioners, they, or even virtuoso pianists or saxophone players, they can reach those states quite readily, almost every time, very, very deep. I think they are reaching deep states of samadhi, but nobody's told them that. But it's very unusual for normal people to do that. And of course, monks have a lot of time for, for practice.
Bante, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the people that play piano, that their mind is in a state of some kind of zone, that maybe like they forget themselves and in the kind of sense. But is it a really jhana? Because for the jhana, you need to have the jhana factor has to be really clear. If they are
Yes.
in the jhana, so those people they may be in some kind of zone that forget themselves. But do they have the jhana factor? They might.
They might. They don't know what they are, though.
Right.
So this is the teaching of the awakening factors and the jhana factors are dhamma that we investigate. Actually, the seven awakening factors are one of the exercises in the Satipatthana Sutta that we investigate. So we learn to investigate these awakening factors. And similarly, we can investigate the jhana factors. We become aware of them. As we become aware of them, we become more adept at kind of navigating between jhanas. It's still effortless, but we can actually, it's kind of, kind of leaning into the next jhana. I don't, and then it appears. I think of it as, children on a swing. They can get on the swing, they get a running start by, running across the ground, but then they know how to make the swing go higher and higher. But darned if, any of them can figure out how they're doing it. It's just, they're just leaning into doing it higher and higher. And I think this becomes part of our samadhi practice. When we refine samadhi, because we understand the factors, we've internalized them, we have a whole feel for this realm of samadhi that that we acquire some ability to actually, go deeper. So it's important to know and actually familiarize ourselves very thoroughly and internalize the jhana factors.
Thank you, Bante.
They're all present. They can all be observed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Anybody online? Alrighty. Then with that, we will end for today. So if everybody will please stand, we will do our 3 vows. 3 bows to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And 1 bow to our speaker today, Venerable Cintita. Thank you all very much.